The morning she left, the air in the glasshouse tasted like salt and unfinished sentences. A wind from the port had crept up Alder Rise, thin and cold, carrying the faint clang of ship metal and gull cries that never reached full sound. Every room she'd touched was tidied to absence, no perfume, no glass out of place. No trace of sleep on the bed she'd once smoothed as though silence itself might wrinkle. Only the window in the hallway remained half open, tilted inward, letting the fog slide across the floor like a question left unanswered. I found her note on the table, written in her usual careful script, "Keep it open. It remembers what we forget." Beneath it lay her brass hairclip, polished and precise. And beside that, the cracked watch that had outlived 3 seasons of rain. The watch was still ticking. The sound seemed louder without her, as if it had lost its listener. I moved through the house, each step meeting its own faint echo, the rhythm uneven, searching. The reflection in the glass wall followed me half a second late, as always, like it needed to confirm that I was still here. In the kitchen, 2 plates were drying upside down, water beading on their edges. On one of them, I saw her reflection once more. Not full-bodied but faint, an afterimage shaped by light rather than memory. "You can close it now," she'd said last week, when the rain came hard enough to blur the city below. "No," I'd replied, "I like how the air sounds when it enters." "It's not air," she'd whispered. "It's everything we refused to say." Now, in her absence, that air moved freely, gentle but insistent, nudging the curtain to one side. Outside, Whitlock City shimmered behind the mist, glass towers rising like promises no one could keep. I thought about closing the window, about sealing the house back into its own breath. But then the clock ticked once, sharp, deliberate, and I stopped. The sound didn't come from the watch, it came from the walls, from the glass itself. The whole house seemed to exhale. In the reflection, the fog looked like her dress, the curtain like her hand. I touched the brass clip. It was warm, impossibly warm, as if she'd just set it down. Somewhere deep in the structure, a door latch clicked, slow and solitary. The window moved a fraction wider, answering itself. I understood, then, that she hadn't left a question for me to solve. She'd left one for the house. And like all good questions, it refused to close. The next day began with the same gray light, soft and uncertain. The window she'd left half open let the air in with a sound like someone hesitating before speaking. I walked past it carefully, afraid to disturb the rhythm it had chosen. The curtains breathed in and out, slow and deliberate, as if the house itself were testing lungs it had never used. Her absence wasn't quiet, it was structured, deliberate, like a silence that knew exactly where to sit. The coffee she used to grind was gone, but the smell still hovered faintly, bitter and precise. I found myself listening for her footsteps, for the way her heels struck the floor a fraction before the echo did. But there was nothing, only the steady, polite tick of the hallway clock. On the table, the brass clip caught a line of sunlight and threw it across the floor. The beam stopped at the window's edge, perfectly framed, as if the light itself had been trained by her. I sat down beside it and listened. The wind moved through the half-open pane, shifting its tone every few seconds, sometimes a whisper, sometimes a sigh, sometimes something that sounded like a word I almost recognized. The glass house had always been good at imitation, now it was imitating her voice. "You'll forget," it seemed to say. "You'll close it one morning, and the air will forget how to find you." I laughed quietly, unsure whether at myself or the room. The watch lay where I'd left it, still ticking. The crack across its face splitting the light into twin lines. I pressed it to my ear, and for a moment, I could have sworn I heard breathing beneath the tick. Maybe it was mine, maybe not. The longer I listened, the harder it became to tell which part of this silence belonged to her, and which was simply waiting for me to answer. That evening the fog rose higher than the rooftops, smudging the lights of Whitlock City until the skyline looked like a memory trying to disappear. The half-open window let the mist slip inside in thin ribbons, curling through the hall as if tracing where she used to walk. I didn't light the lamps. The house glowed faintly with its own reflected light, the kind that hides more than it shows. I found myself standing where she used to pause, by the stairwell mirror. The one that always showed us from the chest up, as though refusing to admit we had legs for leaving. Her absence hung there like perfume, not scent but shape. I caught my reflection and almost mistook it for hers. The air stirred. Somewhere between the rooms, a faint chime sounded, the metallic click of the window shifting another inch. It was no longer half open, it was learning to open itself. I walked toward it, my steps careful, though the floor made no sound. The brass clip on the table gleamed in the low light, its curve catching the fog like a net. The watch beside it had stopped ticking, but when I touched it, the hands trembled faintly, as though waking from obedience. I set it back down. The house pulsed once, quiet but undeniable, like breath returning to a body. "You're not here," I said aloud. My voice didn't echo, it sank. Then the curtain lifted, stirred by a draft that didn't belong to weather. The fog outside moved closer to the glass until it seemed to press its face against it. Within its pale blur, I saw motion, a figure, blurred and exact in the same moment, standing at the edge of the hill. My stepmother, or what the silence remembered of her. She raised one hand, palm outward, and the window trembled. I wanted to open it wider, to prove she wasn't real. But the air between us felt like a warning. She didn't move again, only dissolved slowly back into the fog, leaving the faintest trace of warmth against the glass. I stood there until the clock resumed ticking, slow, hesitant, like it, too, had seen something it didn't wish to count. Night fell without sound. The glass house turned dark except for the soft blue gleam of the city below, flickering through the fog like veins of distant light. The window stayed half open, a deliberate wound in the wall. I sat across from it, watching the curtain sway in a rhythm that didn't match the wind outside. It moved slower, more thoughtful, as if something unseen were standing just beyond the frame, breathing through the gap. On the table, her brass clip glowed faintly, reflecting the clock's pulse from across the room. The air smelled faintly of rain and metal. I could almost hear her voice again, that careful, measured tone she used when she didn't want to sound afraid. "A house becomes what you whisper to it," she once said. That's why this one learned to keep secrets. I reached for the clip, turning it in my fingers. Its hinge creaked softly, the same sound it used to make when she pinned her hair up before speaking to my father. The noise carried through the room, and the window responded with a quiet shift, a hinge flexing, a sigh escaping. "You hear me?" I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I meant her or the silence that had taken her shape. The clock struck once, though it wasn't the hour. The sound came out fractured, as though it had passed through water. I felt it in my ribs more than I heard it. The curtain lifted again, higher this time, revealing the faint reflection of the dining room in the glass. A figure stood there, me, but not quite. Its hands rested on the window frame like hers once had. its head tilted in the same patient way she used to listen. For a moment I couldn't tell which side of the glass I was on. Then the light shifted and the reflection blinked first. I stepped back, heart pounding, and the curtain fell into stillness. The air smelled sharper now, like lightning before rain. Somewhere deep in the walls, the house released a soft crack, not a breaking but an adjustment. As if making room for something returning. I left the clip where it was. The silence pressed closer, and I realized it no longer waited for me to listen, it was listening back. By dawn, the fog had thinned into a pale veil that made everything look slightly erased. The half-open window still drew the air in gentle threads, each one cool enough to sting the skin. I found the brass clip on the table where I'd left it, now coated in a thin mist. The watch beside it had stopped again, its hands resting between seconds. The silence in the house was different now, no longer heavy, but watchful. Like it had chosen what to keep. I walked toward the window and touched the sill. It was damp, cold, but breathing. Outside, Whitlock City shimmered through the fog, towers dissolving into their own reflections. For a moment, I thought I saw her on the path below, walking uphill toward the house. Her coat the same muted color as the morning. But when I blinked, she was gone, and only the wind remained, pushing softly against the glass. The curtain moved once more, slow and deliberate, like a hand finishing a gesture. "You can close it," a voice whispered, not from the room, not even from memory, but from somewhere between the sound and the air. I didn't. Instead, I stood still and let the fog spill inside, folding around my arms, carrying that faint trace of her perfume that should have vanished weeks ago. The watch ticked once, impossibly, then fell silent again. I looked at my reflection in the glass and saw her shape just behind mine, faint and exact. Our outlines overlapping until they were indistinguishable. The silence deepened, patient and complete, and I understood. She hadn't left the window open to return. She had left it open so I would learn to listen the way she did, to the pauses, to the drafts, to the parts of love that never spoke. The curtain settled, the fog retreated, and the light turned gold along the edge of the sill. Somewhere in the distance, a door closed, soft but final. The window remained half open, like a question that no one was meant to answer.